Hello, you're welcome to this edition of Timeless Conversations. My guest today is a politician, a statesman, a trained physician and cardiologist, a man who loves his community and is sold on the idea of integration within the community and Africa at large. Please welcome with me, Dr. Abimbola Ogunkelu. Dr. Abimbola Ogunkelu is a healthcare practitioner, politician, and statesman who hails from Ibon, Ekpe. He runs his practice at Kelu Specialist Hospital, Lagos, Nigeria. Dr. Ogunkelu is a former Minister of Cooperation and Integration in Africa. A community man at heart, Abimbola is sold on the idea of integration in Africa at large, using the community as base. Okay, how are you, sir?
Fine, I'm fine.
It's a pleasure for me to welcome you to Timeless Conversations. This show attempts to meet people of your generation, and even sometimes other younger generations who have achieved something in society. By that I mean making impact within society, who have had the opportunity of leadership, and who today are in a position to share their experiences with people. You trained as a physician and you are a specialist cardiologist.
Yes, that's correct.
Let me ask you this. As a healthcare practitioner, how would you describe this healthcare situation in Nigeria going back to the early days? By early days, I mean your professional early days, and at the time that is told and what it is now today.
Well, we've had our ups and downs in the healthcare. And there was a time we picked up, particularly at a time when Professor Olikoye Ransom Kuti of blessed memory started this primary healthcare, such that healthcare can get to everybody. And that was a pickup. But I would like to go back to earlier days.
Yes, sir.
In the 50s, when in Western Nigeria, there was free primary education and free health care for young people up to 18 years of age that Chief Awolowo started. When those two programs started in 1954, people thought it was impossible. But with doggedness, it took on and went on, and other parts of the country had to move into it. Then we were building up. Then there was a coup. There was the war, civil war. And from then onwards, we went down a little bit. And then in the 80s, it picked up again. And I think that's the 80s to the 90s. And then, of course, when economy is bad, health is badly affected. It went down. A lot of our healthcare practitioners are moving out. They call them Japa now.
Japa, yes.
They're now Japa.
Yes.
And I remember in the 80s, I had quite a lot of young, vibrant doctors working with me in my practice. And practically all of them went to England, went to America. They become great physicians today, surgeons, and they went to go and get postgraduate education. And practically all of them, they are staying out. But there is now a new swing when some of our doctors outside, either they come for health missions, or they come and do stints, weekend stints or weekly stints. They come from America, come from US, bring the latest technology and back here. And we must do everything to encourage many of them to come back. And in coming back, and if the country gets back to what it should be, good security, power, electricity, water, and all basic things, many of them who are there, they will come back here. Because what really do people want outside that they are leaving their country. It's if there is no security, you can't go out and be sure you come back safe. Yeah. And there is poverty all around. But if we can work hard and do all of this, particularly power and water, if Nigeria has that, Nigerians are not lazy people.
Yes. Okay, let's prosecute this issue of Japa. From your explanation, it means that the idea of people relocating from Nigeria overseas is not that new. It's always been there in generations.
Yes.
But what makes it more astounding now is that the numbers are higher. People even say something like, oh, in medicine we're losing too many doctors and all that. How is that impacting healthcare delivery?
Of course, when you don't have the right personnel, even if you have gigantic medical centers, teaching hospitals, and the personnel are not there, you cannot achieve much. And we must do everything possible to make our people come back home and help. I must tell you that among the topmost doctors in America or UK, they are Nigerians. Yes. And as a matter of fact, Nigerians in America constitute the most highly educated group.
That's true.
Even more than Americans. Yeah. We have almost every family. You want to produce doctors, you want to produce PhDs and so on. And we are highly educated. And that's a lot of capital that's sitting out there that should be back to this country.
Back to the country. Now, talking about it coming back to the country, you were once Minister for Integration.
Yes.
And part of that, and so that you were in charge of ECOWAS affiliations and all that. ECOWAS, is it still relevant?
ECOWAS is relevant, very relevant, and will always be relevant. The development blocks of the community blocks of different parts of Africa, they are the building blocks of Africa. If you work, what it means that you are working at regional level, not just by yourself. You must remember that Nigeria, Africa, is like a big cake that was cut into pieces by the Westerners. Yes, the conference of 1884, Conference of Berlin, 1884, 1885. Yeah. The colonialists, the Europeans said, instead of fighting ourselves over Africa, let's carve Africa up. And we got carved out. Now, Nigeria is here, but people who speak, who we call indigenous, they're all over the place. Yeah. You go to Benin Republic, 1/3 of their population, they are Yoruba people, they call them Anago. Yeah. If you go to Niger, they are Hausa speaking. If you go to Ghana, the Ga people of Ghana, they are Yorubas, they are Anagos. Yeah. And if you go to even Cote d'Ivoire, you find them, not to talk of going to Sierra Leone. Now, for the colonial interests, we were carved up. Now, if we now can work at regional level, we start to work with ourselves. And that's why economic communities are very essential for Africa's development.
Yeah, you may wonder why I asked that question, because I'm going to persist a little bit. It is because one of the structures or indices that could have been useful in the integration is a common currency.
Yes.
This has not taken off. Will it ever take off?
It will take off. It requires the will of the people. When I was Minister for Cooperation and Integration in Africa, one of the things we were working on was common currency. First of all, we had the movement of persons, goods and services in the ECOWAS sub-region that if you produce anything in any ECOWAS country, going to another ECOWAS country, no duty, no excise duty, nothing. It's like you are producing it in your country. Yes. So that's a plus. Now you can come from an ECOWAS country, come from Senegal, come to Lagos in Nigeria. You can stay for at least 3 months. Yeah. Even you can stay longer. And we created ECOWAS passport. If you look at the Nigerian passport, you see ECOWAS on it. It was when I was Minister of Integration that we achieved this. Now we worked on common currency. That was a tug of war. First of all, we had a framework of what should become the ECOWAS Central Bank. Yeah. We had an office in Ghana looking into this, ECOWAS this. And when I was the chairman of the Convergence Council for ECOWAS on common currency, that's when we had a tug of war. Ghanaians wanted the money to be called CD. They said CDAO is the French acronym for ECOWAS country of West African countries. And the Guineans of Guinea-Conakry, they wanted us to use Guinea. You know, in the old days, when you had the pound, you also had 1 pound, 1 shilling was one Guinea. They thought that would be attractive to Anglophone people. But I got a few of us together and said, look, let's call it ECO. From ECOWAS. It's easy. CDAO, we hardly talk about it, but ECO from ECOWAS. And I was the chairman of the Convergence Council at the time. It took a bit of lobbying and background work. Eventually, the day we decided, we got it. Now, the next step is to create the ECOWAS Central Bank and common currency. At that time, the GDP of Nigeria was 60% of GDP of ECOWAS. And Nigeria's population was 59% of the whole of ECOWAS. And I remember a particular meeting we went to it was an emergency ECOWAS meeting in Ivory Coast in Côte d'Ivoire. The president of Senegal was asking that, look, what is the point of all this? Why don't we just accept Naira? And then we are this. Our president, Obasanjo, was smart enough to say no, because that would have been a trap. Yes. So he said, no, we have to have a common currency. We must have convergence and this. But we also realized that there was a problem, because for the Francophones, with the pact they have with France, their GDP is tied to Francis. Their foreign reserve must be in France, and so on. And one of the things I was planning to do before I left office, I couldn't accomplish, was to make a trip to Paris to meet the minister in charge of Francophone countries, so that we can explain to them the position of Nigeria and of ECOWAS about common currency. We've not been able to achieve that, but I think it's a thing that must be done.
Sir, I see your passion, even as you recall it. Yet, to the average Nigerian, what is this ECOWAS thing, sir? That's what they say. Is there the possibility of national issues, nationality fears, independence fears, driving these other countries and even Nigerians from fully embracing the ECOWAS idea?
No, I think it's lack of understanding of what everybody has got to gain. And I think we must do more public relations and enlightenment so that people know that ECOWAS is for the... Look, there's European Union.
When I was coming.
If you go back, for those of us who during colonial time, I went to school during, I went through secondary school during colonial time.
Yes.
We were forced to study English history, European history.
Yes.
You have heard about 30 years war among Europeans.
Yes.
And there was even the 100 years war among the Europeans. Then there was First World War, Second World War. And now Europeans got together and they are working together. Even Britain, insular Britain, did not join at first. They joined, opted out, and I won't be surprised if they get back to Europe.
And well, you beat me to that because I was going to say...
Because that's where they belong.
I was going to say that Britain was in the European Union and then they got out.
Yes.
Do you think they will ever come back in there?
I think they will go back.
Why do you say so?
Oh, look. Before an English person, while in the European Union, can just take off and go to Spain, and go to Malaga, and go to for holiday, now they must get visa. Now they will be asking, for how long is this going to last? You know, they have a little way out.
Yeah, they do.
With Northern Ireland.
Yes, they do.
And then Ireland itself, Republic of Ireland, is in the European Union. Fully. Yeah. And they are enjoying all the benefits. Yeah. So they made a mistake in the sense that during the debate, should we opt out, Brexit, not Brexit? No Brexit, yes. The government in power at the time did not do enough campaign to talk to their people in the backwoods of England. Because they only talk of backwoods in Africa. But in England, they have their villages, they have their farmlands. They didn't talk to them. Those people don't see need for Europe. Whereas if you are living in London or Birmingham, you want to go to France, you want to go to... But those people say, what's... Whereas if the government had informed them adequately and there was enough campaign, they wouldn't have left.
But then they also had the issue of economics. The economy, they felt that the British economy would grow better if they opted out of the EU.
But has it grown better?
Well, I think experience teaches best.
Okay. So, always when there is a group and you work as a group, you benefit more than if you work as an individual. And we in Africa, we must not make that mistake. We have our economic communities. Now we have our AU, African Union. When I was Minister of Integration, that was when we were working on transforming from OAU to AU. And people were saying, what is in this thing? We just continue with the way we are. No, we can't continue with the way we are.
Let's take a break now. When we come back, we'll talk more about integration because I think that's a subject that fits your cap very well. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Timeless Conversations. My guest is Dr. Abimbola Ogunkelu, former Minister for Cooperation and Integration in Africa. We've been talking about his experiences, especially as Minister, the role of ECOWAS, what he thinks ECOWAS can still achieve today. We're about to graduate to AU, the African Union. You said earlier, sir, that the colonialist balkanized Africa through the Berlin Conference, and since then, hitherto commonly related people have found themselves on different sides of countries and borders. Yet there is the yearning of Africans to unite. Why is the AU yet to effectively unite Africa?
The African Union, the AU, is in the process. You can't unite Africa in one day. the damage done to Africa, damage still being done in Africa is so much that it's going to take time for us to get the full union that we want. Okay. But we are on the journey, and we must continue to urge our leaders, our presidents, heads of states, to continue the march relentlessly towards unification of Africa. The African countries will remain as countries, but working together for development, for growth, should increase. When I was Minister of Integration, African Integration, intra-African trade was less than 10%. But with the recent charter of African trade and all that, yes, it's going to increase. Okay. There was resistance. Before you are growing a product in a country, let's take Senegal. Senegal was producing peanuts, groundnuts. Mm-hmm. They must ship their groundnuts to France first, before sent to other Africans. But there was a time we went on a trip to Senegal, and this talk came up between President Wade and President Obasanjo. My president just turned to me, look into it, who can take that up in Nigeria? And we had to find a Nigerian company that mills groundnuts into oil. Okay. And we can get. The same thing was with melons in Burkina Faso. Yeah. Everything, even we in Nigeria, except that we start breaking off from Britain early in independence, anything we wanted, we first go to UK and then come back to us or come back to Africa.
But seriously speaking, sir, do you think that is just all about the policies of the colonialists alone? What about the mentality of the people? That expression, colonial mentality, which makes most Africans prefer anything that is foreign to an indigenous thing?
Yes. When you are colonized, yes, you are not just colonized economically. You are colonized religiously, culturally, mentally, everything.
Educationally?
No, the education, that's the basis. As a matter of fact, there are books about this.
Yes.
That King Leopold of Belgium,
yes,
in Congo, yes, now DRC, yes, he sent his colonialists there, soldiers with a priest and administrator. The soldiers conquered the people, the administrator administered them, and the religious man destroyed local religion so that they can absorb
the new one.
The new one. So, if you look at us in Nigeria, yeah, there are books about African religion, history of Yorubas, and religion of Yorubas. Yeah. It was easy for them to penetrate us because if you are a proper Yoruba person, imbued with Yoruba culture and religion, yeah, another country comes, another grower and talks about God and says there is one God. Yes. For a Yoruba man, Ọlọ́run ló wà, Ọlọ́run Olódùmarè.
Yes, and then there are some lesser gods.
The so-called lesser gods, yes, is the white man that called them gods, yes, with small g. Small g, yeah. We didn't call them gods. No. We called them ancestors. Oshi.
Yes, that's true.
We didn't call them gods, yes, but in their own interpretation, they now call them gods with small g. And their own god, big G. Big G. But it's not difficult to convince a Yoruba man about God, Olodumare, yeah, creator of heaven and earth. Yeah. Because in indigenous Yoruba religion,
there is that being.
No, we believe in one God. One God, yes. But there are ancestors, yes, which white man now call God with small g. Yes. And our children now are growing up and calling them gods too. Yes. But they are not. They are ancestors.
They are ancestors who lived amongst us, and then their performances, their life histories became legend for spiritual growth and worship.
And when we worship them, we don't worship them like we worship God. Olodumare. In traditional Yoruba religion, you only pray to God Olodumare. There is no temple, there is no shrine for God Olodumare. You want to pray to God, you look in the sky. Ọlọ́run Olódùmarè gbà mí o.
Gbà mí o, afúgbẹ́lẹ́jẹ
má lójú ìbárẹ́ o. Okay. Whereas the white man came and turned everything we were doing into something terrible, and then even our children nowadays, if you want to tell them about some of the practices and this, it's difficult for them. But I think some of this will have to come back.
How? There would be need for some cultural renaissance?
Yes, there will be, but it has to do with culture, with music, with different practices. Because the Yoruba religion,
or
African religion is imbued into everything we do.
That's true.
But I'm saying Yoruba specifically because I understand that. I've lived with it, and then we can understand that the white man, when they came, in order to capture us totally, they believed that they must destroy what we had, impose their own, and then build a new person. So the African today, we are not pure Africans, and we must get back to that.
Not pure Africans?
In culturally.
Oh, culturally?
Yes.
Or we're not proud of our culture enough?
We don't know enough, even know enough about our culture. We must get back to that, of making people know more about our culture and then following it and be proud of it.
Okay. Now, still talking Africa, let's talk about security. There's a great deal of insecurity on the African continent. Using our experience in Nigeria as an example, there is suspicion, and proven suspicion at that, that because of the accessibility of non-Nigerians to cross into our borders, they come in, they operate. There's been that insecurity up north that has led to accusations of those guys who are the insurgents or the bandits, as we call them now. They come in, go into communities, stop them, and then they now extract taxes or fiefdoms and all that, and ransom from them. Could this also be seen as a fallout of that process of integration through ECOWAS, for instance, in West Africa?
No. It's a process that derives from breakdown of law and order in Nigeria. These people that cross our borders use cattle, heads of cattle, for example, they want to bring it in, and this. It happens only in Nigeria. In Ghana, 2-3 years ago, they moved their cattle into Ghana. And the president of Ghana said, any cattle on foot, pick it up, kill it, and barbecue it. And I saw on television, northern Ghana, where they brought in their cattle, and the police came and they were begging, please, this one is laden with yes, that we soon deliver calves. Please don't kill it. We are moving out. And they moved out. In Nigeria, we didn't even stop them. We opened our borders and said, since we have some of our people in northern Nigeria who are Fulani, who are headsmen, come and do whatever you like. It's a breakdown of law and order in Nigeria. And that has to change.
Yeah. But what would be the solution?
The solution is there. This breakdown of law and order occurred primarily in the last 8 years. But before then, there was the problem of Boko Haram.
Yes.
Okay? Boko Haram was more northeast Nigeria, it's not a cross-border, because they couldn't operate in Niger, they couldn't operate in North Cameroon, only North Nigeria. And attempt was made to contain them and take care of the insurgency, but it was not done. Now, in the last 7-8 years, everybody came. All the Fulanis that were dislodged in Central African Republic, they all moved to Nigeria. Everybody is coming. I don't mind migration of people, yes, but it must be orderly. It must be according to law of the country. Now, they now go, you now go, there was an attempt also to create colonies for them. If they've come, community where they are, if they are accepted, let them stay. But government cannot go out of its way to create colonies within Nigeria.
Actually, talking about communities where they are accepted, I know that across Nigeria, all parts of Nigeria, there are communities and settlements of non-indigenous people who live in peace with their host communities. It is there in Songota, it's there in Shagamu, it's there in even Ikorodu.
Yes.
It's everywhere. And we saw recently a Fulani person who spoke Igbo like
an Igbo man.
Like an Igbo man who said, I've lived there all my life.
Yes.
These are the kind of communities that can be encouraged by peaceful integration. But government still has a role in this. What do you think government's role would be or should be in that?
Government's role is to promote peace, okay, among people. This present government tried to create RUGA, that is rural grazing area, yes, in different parts of the country. It's not going to work. They tried in recent times that all lands bordering on rivers and ocean must be federal land. Nobody is going to accept that. Yes. And what they need to do is that if people have come into Nigeria to live here, they should live peacefully with the people who already lived there. But you cannot come and displace people like they were trying to do in Benue State. Yeah. That's not going to work. Okay. It's recipe for strife and for war. Yeah. And in any case, in Nigeria, there is total breakdown of law and order. Everybody, you go out, you make sure you are home by 6, not later. You are even in your house, you are not sure what's going to happen to you. There must be a reassessment of the security architecture of Nigeria. We are under-policed in Nigeria. 350,000 policemen for over 200 million people. Are we joking here? Before independence, excuse me, yes, before independence, we had Nigerian police, yes, we had state police, we had local government police. Even Obas, they have their own Akoda.
Akoda, yes.
Now, there was civil war. The military abolished all of that. We must get back to regional police, to state police, and all that. We are under-policed. And now we deceive ourselves and say we are creating vigilante. Police is police, vigilante is something else. And until we get back to that, we are not going to have to enforce security in Nigeria.
Thank you. I was actually going to talk about the proper policing of our country. You mentioned the pre-Civil War,
yes,
era of the local police. But there's this statement that's always been used to defend the centralization of policing. And this is the statement I'm quoting, not verbatim, that we are not ready to have state police because they will be abused. The question other schools of thought ask is the present arrangement not being abused?
No. Some people or some group, they benefit from centralization of the police system in Nigeria, and they wouldn't want it changed. Before independence, the white man said we were not even ready to rule ourselves. We've proved them wrong.
Yeah, right.
Give us state police, give us local government police. They will be people of that area. And if you are misbehaving, we know your father, we know your family. There will be repercussion. We call your people to even talk to you before we take you to court. Any structure of government can be subject to abuse. Greatest abuse in Nigeria is corruption. That our resources are being frittered away. Yes. Are we now going to say we no longer have resources because some people will steal the money? Let us have proper policing in Nigeria. Let us have federal, state, local government police. Go to England. Go to America. You have FBI, federal police. You have state police. You have county police. You have city police. You even have a village police.
And there's police within the community, the educational community. Every college,
every university, yes, there's campus police. Yes. So when we are done, we should also have campus police. So that, what's the difference? Look, it gets me. They talk about corruption. The word corruption is not a Yoruba word. Yeah. It's an Oyinbo word. Yes. If Oyimbos are not corrupt, will they have the word in their dictionary?
No, they wouldn't.
Okay. Now, you can be as corrupt as you want, and you can be as accountable as you want, provided you make the effort. The difference between a white man and a black man living, or don't let me say black and white, between a man living in America and living in Nigeria, is that you are in America, you commit a crime. There is no statute of limitation to crime.
The law will eventually catch up.
It will catch up with you, maybe 20 years, even if you've committed murder. All the murders committed before, now we have DNA. They are now using DNA and pulling them back and dealing with them. Here, you commit a crime. If you are loaded and you have the money, you kill somebody, you go scot-free because there is corruption. So the word corruption is white man's language, but they contain it by accountability. You commit a crime, you make the time. Here, you commit a crime, the more money. First of all, when they catch you, you've stolen money. How much? How many billions? All of a sudden, they will divide it into 3. Judge go take 1/3. Police go take. If you are lucky, you get 1/3, and you can walk away. So we must have accountability. You commit a crime, you make the time.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a break now. When we come back, we're going to talk about your growing up and the role of the youth, the community within the community and the youth within the community, and the responsibilities that can be assumed or assigned to these levels of engagement. We'll be back shortly. You're welcome back to Timeless Conversations. Dr. Abimbola Ogunkelu is still my guest. We're going to talk to him now about something I know to be dear to him, which is politics and statesmanship. You're a politician, you're also a statesman. Growing up, what inspired you to go into politics? Was there something in your youthful days that marked you out that I must contribute to my community?
Well, it started quite a while back, in the 50s, in the early 50s. And as young people in my community, we always played, boys must play soccer.
Yes.
And then we decided we form a club. My hometown is Ibonwo, in Ekwe, local government. We formed Ibonwo Youth Organization. Actually, I was the president
of IYO.
IYO. And so we will organize parties at Christmas, particularly first few days of the new year. And of course, boys and girls will have parties and so on and so forth. We'll have this club and so on. But what struck me was, I think, 1953. Chief Obafemi Awolowo came to Ekwe Division. And at our local government sports near Ibonwo, called Irido, we all lined up to welcome him. And in all the talk he did that day, he said, "You children, you are the leaders of tomorrow." I looked at myself, barefoot.
Yes.
My neighbor, barefoot. We, leaders of tomorrow.
How?
How? The thing stuck in my head. So we had our Ibonwo Youth Organization. And of course, we went through, finished primary school, went to post-primary, went further on. And the club continued. We even had a constitution that you can be member from age of 12 to 35. We had a written constitution. And I went abroad. I went first to Italy. Bologna to study. How did you know that?
I read about you.
University of Bologna is the oldest university in the world.
Wow.
That is where the word university was first used. Universitas Universitatis, 1086 AD. Before they talked of schools of higher learning, yes. Timbuktu, Alexandria, Greece, yes. But they called them institution of higher learning. But where the term university was first used, Bologna. I think I feel lucky to have gone to that place. I studied medicine there. And after I finished medicine, even in my final year, sixth year, I took the American exam that we allow you to practice in America.
In America.
And I passed. And then I went on to America and specialized in internal medicine. After that, did fellowship in cardiology. I must tell you, as a matter of fact, before I went to medical school at all, I wanted to be a pediatrician, look after children. But while I was in medical school, there was a particular institute, Institute of Pathologia Medica, medical pathology, yes. Where there was the old professor, the next person to him was a cardiologist. And then they had a cardiology unit. And then in my last 3 years, they admitted me as a special student. They would pick a few of us, yes. And you must have your grades, so that we go around with the doctors in that institute, okay. And so on. So I got into cardiology. And no regrets. Okay. So while I was in the US, I did internal medicine, cardiology, fellowship, and then I became cardiology research fellow. And I also got a professorial appointment as assistant professor of medicine in 1974.
That way back.
Way back. So from 74 to 76 was, then I came back in 76. But while we were in, while in Bologna, we had the African Students Association. I was the president of the African Students Association. And we knew what we've gone through in Nigeria, in Africa, and that we want to all go back to Africa. That, look, we have in this place, this was what we were always telling ourselves. We've come to this place to acquire knowledge, and we must go back to Africa. Now, I even went on, because by the time I graduated in 1968, there was civil war. Yeah. I can't even come back to Nigeria. I didn't want to come back. Yeah. Because I slept one day, I dreamt I was back in Nigeria, and I was surrounded by Biafran soldiers. And one classmate of mine from St. Gregory's, who was actually leader of Biafra at that time, was the one who said, Bimbore. Yeah. Said, no, I'm going to deal with this one. Give him to me. Took me. When the soldiers went away, he told me, run.
That's in the dream.
In the dream. Yeah. So I felt I shouldn't go back to Nigeria at this time. So I went to America. Yeah. Now, I'd gone to America. I've achieved my objective of specialization. I even started to teach there. Should I stay here? Should I go back? I then decided I would go back. And I came back. I went to Ife. In 1975, Ife gave me a job as senior lecturer. I said, no, I can't leave. I will leave a year later because my wife was finishing her master's. And I will come back. They even gave my wife also a job in Ife. We got to Ife. Our problem was accommodation. No accommodation. I would travel from Lagos to Ife, sometimes come back the same day, sometimes stay 2 nights. At that time, road was not congested like it is now. And, but after a while, without accommodation, without this, I gave up Ife. That's a sad part of the story. I don't want to go into that. Yeah. And then joined Lagos State government as a consultant. They posted me to Ikeja, and then I had to Ikeja General Hospital. Yeah. But every Wednesday, I will come to Lagos General Hospital to run a cardiology clinic. And I did that from 74 to 78, 77 to 78. In 1978, Obasanjo government did a private practice decree and said that if you work for government, you can't have private practice, whether a doctor, engineer, or this. I got so mad that this is crazy. And how much was I being paid? I was being paid like, at that time, 10,000 naira a year.
Oh, but the naira was strong.
Yeah, strong, but I was earning, my income in America before I came, I was earning $130,000 a year at that time. And then I came back to Nigeria that in government, at the university, I get 10,000. Then clinical supplement will bring it to a little up. So I end up with about $15,000 a year per annum. It was nothing. It was my desire to come back. Yeah. And many of us came back at that time.
Because of that desire?
Where people have their different reasons.
Yes.
But after the Murtala Mohammed coup, we thought Nigeria was going to change. Many of us came back. I think practically everybody went back. But I was stubborn. I said, I don't want to be an exile from my country. And
so you stayed back? So I
stayed back. I'm glad I stayed back.
I was going to ask, do you have any regrets staying back?
No regrets. It's been tough.
Yeah.
It's been tough.
Yes.
But I stayed true.
So now, because of that desire to serve your community, which brought you back, the younger people, the younger generation, the youth, they're clamoring for inclusion, or as we say, inclusiveness, is there any role that the older generation needs to play, like holding them by the hands and saying, this is how we do this, or they, the younger generation, the youth, must show an interest in communal development, which, as far as I can understand, is what politics is all about?
There is no older generation that doesn't care about younger generation. But when youth come and say, Asikowani, it's our turn, old people get out of the way, it's not going to work. Good. They must be prepared for tutelage. Okay. They must be prepared to learn the ropes. Many people just see somebody in politics, is surrounded by vague, and you want that. Many young people, when they come to me, I'm interested, I say, fine. But join the party at your ward level, at wherever you live, and then be interested. When you are there, some of your friends will ask you, what is your interest? Let them know your interest is the party. But there are many of them, the day they join, they want to become commissioner. They want to become this. Others that you've come to meet, they are not going to just let you take over. Yes. So young people must be patient, must learn, must try to learn, and then go on. There is no old person that's stopping young people from catching up. But many young people, they are in a hurry. Many of them, they've not been Boy Scouts. There are no more Boy Scouts. Are there any? There should still be. Yeah, Boys Brigade. If you've been Boy Scouts, Boys Brigade, you are learning how to work together. And then you get into politics, it becomes easier. But nowadays, all they want, particularly young people who are graduates, they think that because they are graduates, they want the topmost job immediately. Nobody's going to give it to you and say, just take. You have to earn it. You have to work for it.
But the inclusion or inclusiveness, to your mind, what does it mean to both the younger generation and the older generation?
Is that we all need one another. We need the young people need the old people for experience, for learning, and we must accommodate each other. But it is time, as a youth ray, look, it's not going to work. There was a time in this country, time of Babangida. Yes. Hey, all these old generation banks, they are useless. Created new generation banks. How many of them are standing today? And all those new generation banks were headed by young people. Yeah. What has happened? People must learn the ropes and take over leadership. But you can't just come from bottom, get on top, and think you will survive. All they say is the glamour and maybe the money that is attached to it that they can make. Let young people take their time, learn the ropes, and old people will welcome them.
Do you think there is hope for this country?
Oh, plenty of hope. One thing I've never done, has never occurred to me, is to lose hope in Nigeria. If this generation doesn't do it, the next generation will do it. But we must continue to reinvent ourselves, to improve ourselves, and to be forward-looking. And know that we are here for a time. Other people are coming. What are we leaving behind?
How does that sit, that hope for this country, sit with the talk of restructuring Nigeria? Without
restructuring, there is no hope for Nigeria. At independence, we had a constitution. At that time, we called it Federation of Nigeria. Yes. By 1962-63, we became Federal Republic of Nigeria. We are still okay. 66, there was coup. 67, Biafran War. The military took over. And even it started from Agui Ironsi. Yeah. When he took over, he said he abolished federation. He wanted unitary government. Then those who did counter coup, they say, because he's doing unitary government, we are doing coup. After they did the coup, they all went and did unitary. But I don't blame the military too much. All they know is a command, is centralized command. Yes. So for them, it's like federal system is an aberration. But we must get back. Without restructuring, we can forget Nigeria.
That's a sad thing to say.
Very sad. And it is serious. We have to restructure. Look, monkey they work, baboon they chop. Yeah. Now, there was oil in the south. All that money went to the whole of Nigeria. Now there's oil in the north. And there are many more resources. In Zamfara, there is gold. Yes. Zamfara, they are mining gold and even selling gold to federal government, to central bank. That should have been Nigerian gold, which now they can share to the country.
But isn't that pointing towards restructuring?
That is why we must restructure. If we restructure, whatever Zamfara produces belongs to Zamfara, then pays taxes to federal government.
That happened in the past?
Yes, in the far past. In the regions. Yeah. Now, let's go back to that. Now, in Bauchi, there is oil. Let them produce the oil in commercial quantity and then pay taxes to federal government. Actually, we have to redimension the federal government. Okay. It's too large and it doesn't reach to every corner. What reaches to the corner is the state government and the local government. So we must restructure.
Sorry, you just touched on local government. Is there local government in Nigeria now?
There are local governments in name and in allocation. You know, I was a federal commissioner, revenue commission, so I know about those things. But that money comes, and then the state takes it in a joint account. They embezzle it.
That's an illegality.
Yes. When I was in revenue commission, we tried that it must go to every local government. But soon after, they made sure that they will create a joint account because they will say the local government, they don't have the structure to spend the money. It's the state government. And they embezzle it. Now we must go back to proper federation, have restructuring. Money due to local government goes to local government. In the old days, local government, they have their works department. They have their dispensary. Even if it's not a full hospital, they took care of people. Today, there is nothing. They just run an office, collect money, then harass people for taxes for local government, for nothing.
Thank you very much for your time and for sharing your experiences and knowledge with us. Thank you. I've really had a very good time talking to Dr. Abimbola Ogunkelu. Thank you, sir, for giving us your time and allowing us to learn from so many perspectives that you have. Look forward to the next time that I will walk into your home or office or wherever you agree to see me to talk more about the ideas that you believe in. Thank you very much, sir. Until next time when we have another edition, it's time for me to say goodbye and thank you for watching. Thank you.